Welcome to the Greater Culture Podcast, where we have conversations about how to elevate the quality of life through movement, nutrition, recovery, and mindset practices. Welcome back to another episode of the Greater Culture Podcast with your host, Brad Marshall. Today, really excited to be joined by a good friend of mine, probably my favorite yoga instructor I've ever had, Jen Fortin. So Jen, thanks so much for taking some time to spend with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to get to connect with you in any way that I can.
Yeah, and so Jen has been leading and guiding folks through yoga in a variety of ways as an instructor, as an owner of a studio, through retreats, and now working on building out the online platform and brand. So Jen, love for you to talk to us a little bit about what that journey was like. How did you come to find yoga, and how did it come that you've had so many great experiences as a yoga instructor that have led you to where you're at now?
Yeah. So I started my yoga practice probably 13 years ago now, right after the birth of my son. I have always dealt with lifelong bouts of depression and anxiety, and it really kicked into gear after I had Cooper. And I didn't know it at the time, but now I know it was postpartum. And I just needed a little bit of an escape, something to kind of make me feel human. I was a stay-at-home mom. I was super lonely, super isolated. So a friend of mine suggested, why don't you go take a yoga class? So I went, actually one of the first classes I took, I did not enjoy, decided to go back and take another one. And with a different instructor, I definitely kind of found my groove. And I started to realize that with the practice of yoga, I was starting to have to sit with myself and my thoughts, and started to really kind of peel back the layers of who I am outside of being a mom, outside of being a wife, maybe some of the traumas that I had dealt with in life, and kind of really having to sit with my shit. And it started to transform me in a way that I just wasn't expecting. It came out of the physical and moved into the emotional and the mental well-being. And as that transformation started to happen, I knew pretty quickly that sharing the practice was something that I wanted to do with my life. It became super important to me to find the space to allow others to come in and sit in their shit and to uncover and provide that really safe space for them to do all of that hard work, because it is hard work, but on the other end of it is magic. You start to find something that you had maybe been missing. So yeah, I've been teaching now for about 9 years. I've been in the fitness industry in general for about 9 years. And through that, like you said, I've worn a lot of different hats. I've worked at your box gyms. I've worked out of my garage. I've owned a studio in North Carolina, which is where I got to meet you, working at your CrossFit gym and at my studio. I've worked with a lot of athletes. That's something that I specialize in, and something that has been a really cool journey and offered me a lot of opportunity. And really it just started by, I'm kind of one of those like, say yes now and figure it out later. I'll take any opportunity that comes my way that feels like it might lead me somewhere cool, or I might learn something, or be able to give to others. So so it's taken me in all kinds of directions. And now here I am in upstate South Carolina. I partnered with an amazing human, my soul sister for sure, Megan Schlobaum, and we are now running retreats all around the world. And I get to teach at her studio, which has been really magical, and mentor in her yoga teacher training program, and starting to dive into, my own thing online and creating courses for people in all kinds of different varieties, continuing education for yoga teachers, and just the everyday person who maybe wants to dive into yoga practice or a fitness routine, but doesn't really know where to start. So kind of giving them those tools to set them up for really a lifestyle.
One of the things I love is how we find a movement practice, we find a yoga practice, and it's us kind of figuring our own things out. And along the way, we have some of those transformational type experiences. And we're like, okay, I want to share this and I want to figure out how do I help others to have the same type of experience that I had. Yeah. And for you, it sounds like yoga was such an impactful part of that journey. A lot of folks, when they look at yoga, they might see, okay, there's studios, you're stretching, you're moving. There's more to it, like you highlighted. So for those who maybe aren't as familiar with what benefits or what yoga really is, what have you come to know about yoga that you would share with somebody who maybe is, I'm interested, I've seen it, but I'm not really sure what it is. It's just stretching for an hour, or what is it actually all about?
Yeah. So, for me personally, the yoga practice definitely starts with the physical. People come in to move their bodies, I think, first and foremost, probably. And the way that we start to move the body in yoga is hopefully with the right instructor at the right studio, really accessible, giving you lots of layers to kind of unwind, discover, open the muscles, healthy joints, all of that good stuff. And within that physical practice, your teachers kind of have a sneaky way of grounding you, bringing in breathing exercises, which has been proven to help with depression, anxiety, mindfulness, presence, all of those things. And then at the end, you get this really magical kind of practice called Shavasana, which is another form of meditation. So you've kind of grounded, you've done some breathing work, you've moved your body in a lot of different ways. And then now you're in this kind of grown-up nap time, is what I like to say to my yoga newbies. You get to kind of just lay down, close your eyes, and again, like turn inward to your breath and start to kind of realize the magic that presence brings. And the goal is, as you keep coming back to your mat and keep coming back to your practice, you start to take those little tools, those little nuggets that you're given in class, and bring them into your everyday life. So when you hit those spots of chaos, which we all do, right? You got something to do at work, or you got, your kids running around and your mind is just going crazy, turning into the tool that you were given during your practice, being able to close your eyes, breathe, be in the present moment, learning not to jump 10 steps ahead or fall 10 steps back. So I think for those who have never done yoga before, coming in for the physical part is totally fine. That is absolutely okay. And I think as you keep coming back to the mat, you start to unearth a little bit more. You start to lean into the breathing practices. You start to lean into maybe meditation, mindfulness, and presence. And then once it all kind of comes together is when you start to maybe see a difference in your relationships, in the way that you handle situations, in your mood, all of the things that maybe you're struggling with in your day-to-day life and you're not sure how to handle in a healthy way. I think yoga starts to set you up for success in those areas.
Yeah, that's one of the things I think that drew me to yoga and specifically your practice, because I think we vibe on that wavelength of a lot of times people don't have a lot of silence or stillness or opportunities to just see what's going on in this internal world with my thoughts and my emotions and my body. And now you give them a chance to, we're going to almost a sneaky way of, hey, we're going to get you to move, get you to feel good, get some of those endorphins going. Then we also just kind of notice and check in and see what's going on internally. And there's a lot of learning that occurs through that process. And when you're working with folks, what are some of the tools that you like to do? So it starts with the movement, but how do you sort of weave in some of those core tenets around mindfulness of presence and focusing on the breath and coming back to the mat that you've seen be really helpful with folks?
Yeah, so I like to be a little bit sneaky about it just because I started my career working with athletes and they weren't necessarily coming for any of that mindfulness, breathwork, presence. They were there because they wanted to know what this was going to do for their body, right? So I had to kind of sneak in the other things. And what I started to find is I kind of gave these tools. So for example, we would start moving through their physical practice and I'll pause them in a space and just ask them to breathe. 4 breaths here. What do you hear? How does it make you feel? Right? And then we move again. Pause here. Breathe. How do you feel? Those little moments, those 4 breaths can unearth a lot because when you start to sit in the quiet and no one's saying, hey, sit down and meditate, this is what we're doing, right? It takes the pressure off. So you can kind of just settle in and decide how you feel. And also giving permission. I say a lot, like I'll ask questions like, how do you feel in your body today? There's no right or wrong answer, right? You do not have to be like, I feel amazing. You can come to your mat and be like, I feel like shit today. And that is okay. However you show up is fine. So I try and sneak in those little moments of breath, definitely grounding at the beginning of practice. I almost always start on your back and just kind of letting people settle in, wiggle around, find a place to settle. And then I'll ask them to turn their attention to the sound of their breath. So again, not really forcing the, okay, we're meditating, we're doing breathing work, but what do you hear? How does it make you feel? Right? What do you feel like in this room today? And giving them permission to be right there for themselves for that hour, as opposed to feeling guilty for spending time on themselves, as opposed to thinking about what they have to do after class, but allowing them to just be there in that moment. And then I think naturally the physical movement, the point of the asana, the physical movement in yoga is to get you to that space in Shavasana where you can let go and quiet the mind a little bit, right? So there's purpose to it. It's grounding, it's movement, and then it's getting you to that space where you can lie down on your mat, close your eyes, and start to let go. And it doesn't go perfectly every time. There are days still, 13 years into my practice where I'm in Shavasana and my mind's racing. And I have to remind myself that that's okay. That's where I am in this moment. My mind's racing. I'm having these thoughts. Take a breath. Just one breath. Okay, here I am. I'm back. Right? So the things that I'm still unearthing and uncovering in my practice, I try to slip in for my students. Like if your mind's racing, it's okay. Come back and take a breath. Right? So just giving them kind of those little tools to know that wherever you are in your practice, it's all right. And then sneaking in the moments of the quiet and the stillness and allowing them to just be there, because like you said, like so often we don't have permission to just be. We're in a culture that's go, 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 do, 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 do. So being almost feels wrong. Sometimes just letting go almost feels like you're doing something you're not supposed to be doing. And I think that it's time to start, unraveling that concept. Like it is okay to rest. It is okay to be present. It is okay to breathe. In fact, it's not just okay. It's absolutely necessary for our mental, emotional, and even physical health. So I know I kind of went off on a tangent there.
No, I think that's exactly what I'm excited to continue. Obviously, the conversation here is about how that holistic picture comes into view by bringing in movement, by bringing in some mindset and mindfulness principles, and how that impacts the emotional side of things and how you show up for your relationships and how you might be more happier and more fulfilled in your life. And yoga is such a great way for folks to tap into that. And because like you said, so many times we go through our days and we're just moving from one thing to the next, checking off the to-do list, and we get home at night and it's like, all I want to do is sit down and try and do absolutely nothing. We never really take stock of what's going on, how we are as a person. Are we showing up the way that we'd like to be? And yoga really does give us that 30 minutes to 60 minutes of an opportunity to do just that. And yoga can look a lot of different ways for people. And that's something that I've learned as well, is there's a lot of different practices similar to going to the gym. And one day we might be lifting a barbell and the next day we're running and the next day we're moving on a piece of cardio equipment. There's a lot of different types of practices for yoga. It's not all just the same. So what are some of the ways in which people might come to understand some of the practices of like, is this the right one for me? Or what are the ones that maybe I should check out or look into?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. And you're right. There's such a huge spectrum of practices that you could dive into for yoga. Some of your more common ones. So a lot of the type A's will start out in power yoga, right? Because they want like the tip top, like this is going to push me the hardest. This is the best, right? Which is bullshit. It's not, but that's what we tell ourselves, right? Like, I'm going to go to power yoga because it's the strongest. And truthfully, that's where I started because I was a lifelong athlete and that's what I knew. Like, you go hard or you go home, right? So you come into this power practice, which can serve a really beautiful purpose. You can definitely find not just physical strength, but you do get that mindfulness and that presence kind of snuck into that power practice because you have to be there. You have to be in your posture. You have to be in your breath to get through the class. So your power practice is usually where the type A start. And those who are maybe a little more laid back, more tame, like, no, thanks, no. So they may go to the other end of the spectrum, which is restorative or yin yoga, which is a much slower practice. Restorative yoga is actually really yummy. And again, kind of that adult nap time where you just load yourself up with props, like bolsters, which are big yoga pillows, yoga blocks, and you just set your body up in these really relaxed ways, and you are there for like 10 minutes. So if you want to talk about presence and mindfulness, restorative is amazing. And we have come to find as yoga teachers, and I say we as a collective, because it's definitely a conversation, type A's have a really hard time with restorative, and those who lean into restorative have a really hard time with power, right? So then they say what you tend to lean away from is what you need the most. So those who take power, I often suggest a slower practice. And it doesn't mean that that's all you have to do, but like a balance of both is beautiful. You can have a little bit of A, you can have that strength, that power, something that make you feel really strong. And then you can have that little bit of B that kind of grounds you and brings you back down. And then somewhere in the middle, you have like mindful flows or just flow class, which is usually a pretty wide range. You move in really fluid ways during the entire class, still that presence because you have to be connecting with your breath, your body, the postures. So there really is this like go hard kind of mentality and power. And then there's this really soft kind of meditative practice with your restorative. And yin is a little different than restorative, not as many props. And you still hold those postures for about 5 to 10 minutes a piece. And that really gets you deep into like the fascia of the body, all the tissues that just really work so hard for you and don't get a break. So I think starting yoga, it's really nice to take a little bite of everything. Decide what feels good to you, and then allow yourself to kind of dive in. I would also suggest if you really hate something, take it a couple times. Right? Sit with it, figure out why you hate it, why it's not speaking to you. And then you can always walk away from it. But I think it's kind of nice to try it a few times and really decide what it is that you don't love about it. And I think too, always trying different instructors is wonderful because you may find someone that really speaks to you, that you really vibe with, that you just love everything they bring to the table. And you may take a class with a teacher that you just don't vibe with, and that's okay. So different instructors, I think, is super important too. And to me, I think it's super important to love what you're doing, right? Whether it's CrossFit, whether it's yoga, whether it's Zumba, like whatever it is that you find that speaks to you, that you can stay consistent with, that builds community, which is so incredibly important to find community. I say go for it. So as you come into a yoga studio, try the range, try a plethora of classes. Any good skilled yoga teacher is going to be able to give you layers of options, right? Stuff that you can go harder, stuff that you can pull back in any class. So, your power is going to be your like kick ass. You're going to be sweating and probably panting by the end of it. And restorative, you're going to feel like you just had a 90-minute massage when you're done. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely a range.
Yeah, I know for me, the restorative is something I've gravitated towards. And I think there's times where CrossFit athletes can gravitate towards that because there's an intensity to the workouts that they're doing where it's like, oh, I have an opportunity now to breathe a little slower, move at a smoother pace here. So it's always a great option for folks. And it's a great way to add that into your just movement practices. So sometimes we're moving fast, sometimes we're moving strong, sometimes we're moving slow. And whether it's yoga or CrossFit, finding that balance, finding those opportunities, it's all going to be super helpful for building that lifestyle that you mentioned before.
Absolutely, 100%. There's definitely room for both. And I think having both just brings us really nice balance. You can work hard, you can go to the gym, you can lift heavy, you can kick ass, and then you can also find that time to just rest, recover, and be with yourself a little bit. And I think having your yin and yang, as we would say in yoga, really, really kind of brings it all together, because too much of anything, it isn't good.
100%.
Balance. Yeah.
100%. And I think when we are able to establish some of those principles around, hey, if I'm somebody who just moves consistently, that can look so many different ways, and we can have fun and enjoy the process. Because I think that's one of my favorite things about taking classes. If you connect with an instructor and they've got a great playlist, and you don't really have to do anything in terms of just show up and listen and be guided, like, it makes it super easy to engage with the instructor then. And I'm really curious. So as you've gone through your journey of finding yoga, becoming an instructor, one of the things we're passionate about is this idea of quality of life, and just how do we elevate that for others. And I think you and I both have that shared passion, which is why we got into the idea of coaching and helping others with their lifestyle. And I'm curious, how have you come to think about this idea of quality of life for yourself, and how you continue to improve that to be a happier, healthier, more fulfilled person?
Yeah. So when I think of quality of life, I kind of think of three things. I put it in three buckets. You have your physical health, your mental health, and your social health. And I think for me personally, finding the balance of the three has been really integral in where my quality of life is lying at that moment. If I'm leaning too hard into any one area, I'm off balance. If I'm pulling way out of any one area, I'm off balance. So a lot of self-check-in, right? A lot of self-check-in, especially when I start to feel myself dipping low, or maybe even like too high in the clouds, kind of checking in. Okay, Jen, what is your physical health commitment every day? What are you doing to feel good? And, 3-4 times a week, it's going to the gym and lifting weights. 3-4 times a week, it's doing a softer yoga practice. So it's finding that consistency for me, that pattern that works for me and my physical health, but making sure that the physical health is being checked, right? And then mental health. Where am I mentally? Is my load too heavy? Do I need to release something? Do I need to step away? Am I doing enough of what sets my soul on fire? Am I doing enough of what makes me happy? Am I doing too much of things that are weighing me down? Where am I in my relationships? Am I putting enough time with my partner, with my husband? Am I putting enough time with my child, but also finding a balance for me? And one thing I wish I would have known when I was a young mom, and a stay-at-home mom especially, was it is okay to make yourself a priority. It is okay to fill your cup. It is necessary to fill your cup, because as you make yourself a priority, you have more to give to others, right? It made me a better mom once I figured it out. Made me a better mom, a better wife, a better friend, all of the things, and just an overall happier me, because I was getting that time. So mental health check-ins definitely are key. And then social health. I'm an introvert by nature, so I have to really put myself out there to go do social things, because it takes a lot out of me sometimes. But I have definitely found throughout the years, and as we grow older and wiser, that finding your people that just feel like home is super important. It's finding your community. I know for me, Blackbird was definitely, my studio was definitely a home for me, where I felt a beautiful sense of community. I can say that same thing about Anderson Yoga Center, where I'm working now. The people there feel like home. I come in and I know I can show up exactly as I am, and they're going to love me for it, good days or bad days. So that quality of life for me is checking in with my physical. Am I doing what I need to do to energize my body? Am I feeding it what I need to feed it to energize my body? Am I putting in good things? Mental health. Am I doing enough of the things that make me happy and bring me joy? And social health. Am I spending time with the people who lift me up and who I can share that with, lift them up? And just being surrounded by the people who make you feel good, who make you want to be better and do better. So yeah, those are the three boxes I check for myself. And I would say those are the three boxes that I say many who are coming to yoga or CrossFit or whatever it is, those are the three areas that we probably even struggle with the most. So helping to find that balance is super important to me. Helping people figure out how they can find that balance and check those boxes, because a lot of times we just don't know where to start.
Yeah. The one thing I appreciate about that is the clarity with which you have and the simplicity of, hey, it's these three things. If I can take care of my physical, my mental, and the social health, then I know that I'm going to put myself in a position to not only be successful, but feel like I'm bringing the best version of myself day in and day out. And it's a simple box of, hey, if I've got these principles, I know exactly if I'm hitting the mark or I'm not. And I think the simplicity and the clarity around that makes it a little bit of an easier process for you to take stock and then help others. And you mentioned that a lot of folks, they come into a yoga studio or a gym because there are things they want to work on. Maybe it's the physical health that we're trying to work on, or the mental health because work or home life is stressful, or it's the social, like I just want to feel connected to a community. So what are the ways in which you try and help folks with that in regards to your work as an instructor? I know I've certainly tried to figure out ways over the years of, okay, you're coming in and I know you want to move and you want to sweat and you want to feel good, but there's also so many other things underlying that we want to work on and we want to have conversations about. So are there things that you've done or you've seen that have been helpful with helping others with their physical, mental, or social health?
Yeah, for sure. I think just learning how to hold space is really important. I think, and you can probably relate to this, I'm sure, as an instructor, people tend to talk to you because coming to the gym or the studio is really kind of becomes their outlet, right? Their safe space, their therapy almost. So learning to hold space, learning to just listen, to accept them as they are, to allow them to be heard. Some people just need to be heard and to talk because maybe they're not getting that at home. Maybe they're not getting that at work or whatever other communities they're a part of. So I found through the years that holding space is just a really important role for me. They're coming for that physical, right? So just guiding them through the best practices that I know how, that I've been trained in, that I've studied for their bodies to keep them moving, but safe and healthy. And as far as the social aspect goes, I really am a true believer in you are the sum of the people that you hang around, right? So making sure that I can be one of those people that someone leaves at the end of the day and says, I feel better for being in her presence. Or I want more of whatever that was. And at the end of the day, it really just comes back to being a supportive person, being a listening ear, and always providing, I try in class the best of my ability to always provide a message of enoughness. It's something I struggled with my whole life, like just never feeling like I was enough, never feeling like I was doing enough, never feeling like I was hitting any of the marks that I was supposed to be hitting. And I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with is enoughness. So I try to reiterate and remind people, you are enough no matter how you show up. You're enough just as you are. And whatever you unravel here today on your mat, whatever layers you peel back today, that's enough too. And maybe you find something you really love that you want to hold on to and embrace more and bring more of out in your life. And maybe you find things that just aren't serving you anymore. And it's okay to let those go. It might be painful, it might be messy, but it is okay to take that journey to release things. So to the best of my ability, I really just try to allow people to be and to feel safe being and to feel enough just being.
Some of those things that you're speaking to there are really that next level of being a coach, an instructor, or a teacher is, okay, we've learned the principles of the practices or the movements, and just about anybody at that level can guide or lead a class. but the connection and building relationships and holding space for people to have a conversation and being somebody who's doing more than just guiding or leading movement, that's that next level instructor or teacher who you can connect with and you can actually make some meaningful change with. And is that something that you've come to learn or experience over the years? So as a teacher for the last 9 years, is there somewhere along the journey where you're like, you know what, there's more to just guiding an hour of practice? Like there's people and there's humans involved here, and I want to find a way to make that connection and make that difference in their lives.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a learning process because you go into teaching like, okay, I need to learn the physical practice. I need to teach it well. Right? It's kind of like really regimented. And then you start to, I think for me, what was really eye-opening was people will start to come up and talk to you after class, and they open up and they share. And I'll never forget, this was probably 4 or 5 years ago. I was working with Campbell University, their football team, and I worked with their team for about 3 years. I think it was the first year I was working with them. And I had this huge linebacker come up to me after, because again, they're not really choosing to be there. They're kind of made to be there by their coaches, right? So again, I'm kind of sneaking and weaving in the mindfulness and the breath work and all of that. And this sweet, amazing 19-year-old young man came up and said, Miss Jen, I am really under so much pressure. I have to be a lot of things to a lot of people, and it's heavy. And I was wondering if you could give me more breathing exercises because that feels like it really helps me. And I have this like aha moment of, here's a group of 75, 19 to 22-year-old football players that I didn't think really wanted to be there, to be honest. And something was sinking in. And even if it was just sinking in for that one student, that one football player, that one person, what I do is bigger than the physical movement. Mm-hmm. It is something that he wants to take that tool. He noticed that at that moment, I feel better doing this thing. And I want more of that in my life because I think it might help me. And it's little stories like that throughout the years, people just sharing and, hey, this really helped me. Or even you witnessed with us in Costa Rica after a few practices, tears, right? People crying, and not necessarily crying from sadness, but just release, just letting go of things that have been stored in the body or the emotions or the mind. And so it's just kind of little things like that accumulated that started to bring me to that moment of, okay, this is way more than a physical practice. And I knew that from my own experience, but you can't force it on people, right? They have to unravel that on their own. And to see it in the process, to see it working in people of all fitness levels, of all age groups, of all demographics, it's really powerful. It's really powerful, and it's really humbling that you get to hold space for these really amazing humans who are going through a journey just like you, right? Who are going through something just like you. And I often remind myself, it's actually like part of my tattoo, everyone has a story, right? Everyone has a story. So doing the best you can to lead with compassion, is really so key, because we just never know what the people in that room are going through. We don't know. We just don't. So, it was just the little moments that kind of gave me that aha that this is bigger than me. And, any little bits that I can give to anyone to help them through their day, through their life, that's what yoga did for me. So if I can do that for someone else or help be a guide for someone else, that's everything.
Yeah, there's a couple concepts there that floating around in my head that have been really meaningful, impactful, and they sound like they are in the same wavelength as you as well. One of those is that when it comes to movements or engaging in a practice, that greatest adaptation is a lot of times between the ears. And yes, we're maybe moving our bodies and we're seeing some physical changes, but it's the mental, it's the emotional changes that are occurring that are probably the biggest impact on our quality of life and how we show up And the second area that made me think of is this idea of just how we develop and how we become better and better through relationships. And sometimes it takes a coach, a teacher, an instructor to open a door we didn't know or we couldn't get through ourselves. And by doing that, by being the person who could unlock a door through breath work, like it made such a difference in that person's life and other people's lives. So those two concepts around how we impact both the mental side and through relationships, how we can grow and get better together, really, really cool and inspiring pieces of being a teacher or being an instructor.
Yeah, it really is. It really, at the end of the day, like this job is a huge responsibility, right? At the end of the day. And you might not go into this career, this profession thinking that, but you start to learn it over time. But like, what an honor. What an honor to be able to do that.
It really is. And sometimes you can get so lost in the day-to-day operations and, running a business and trying to make things work financially and decisions and this and that sometimes you lose sight of, hey, at the end of the day, we're impacting people's lives in a way that's really meaningful and powerful. And that's what got us into it. That's what keeps us in it. And reminding ourselves of that, even as instructors or guides or coaches, like that can be really important too.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't have said that better myself. 100%.
One of the things I'm really curious of is you're someone who has said yes to a lot of things and have had a lot of opportunities to do some really, really cool adventures over the years, from instructing to owning a studio to now doing retreats around the world. I'd love for you to just talk a little bit about that journey, because I think for a lot of folks, if you're interested in being an instructor or a coach or a teacher, it kind of seems like there's one path. Like I have to find a place and either just be a full-time coach there or maybe try and open up my own place. But you found a variety of ways in which you can impact people's lives through yoga. So what has that experience or journey been like, knowing that some doors have opened and some doors have closed, and in the end, it's all been, leading you to the path you're on now?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a wild ride for sure. It has been a wild ride, and one that I wouldn't trade for anything. I have learned so much about myself, about business, about yoga as a career, which, as you know, fitness as a career, it's hard. It's really challenging. I didn't realize when I started teaching the paths that were available to me. Right? I didn't know that you could step outside of a yoga studio or a gym and do something else with yoga. So for me, as I started teaching, I started realizing that fairly early on into the game, because I ended up, just luck would have it, doing private yoga sessions with a family. Their son was a really high-level soccer player, and they happened to have connections with the Carolina Railhawks, which are now the NCFC, and they introduced me very quickly to that team, and I got to work with them for a year, and that was my first year teaching yoga, which is wild. Like, not many people get opportunities like that, right? I just happened to be lucky enough to kind of stumble my way into it. Mm-hmm. So I learned fairly early on in the game that there are other directions I could go. I stuck with yoga for athletes for a while. That's how I got to meet you, teaching classes at the gym you were attending, CrossFit gym. So I kind of navigated that path for a while, but I was always kind of hungry for more. Like, I always wanted to do something else, something more. And so I got the idea in my head that I wanted to own a studio. And I had that vision for a really long time. And it had just never really been the right time. It had never really worked out. And then all of a sudden, one day, I get a message from a studio owner that was moving to Colorado. And she said, "Hey, do you want to run my studio?" And it was honestly a dream that I kind of pushed to the back burner. And me saying yes to everything, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Like, I'm all in. Let's go. So that's when Blackbird came about. And as you know, we opened a few months before the pandemic. And that journey was nothing like I thought it was going to be. Even though there were mostly beautiful pieces, I had beautiful community, beautiful teachers, beautiful students. I learned so much about hard work, commitment, dedication, really having to love what you're doing to be able to do it literally 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Because when you own your own business, like it's all you. So I learned a lot of really wonderful lessons, but a lot of heartbreak too. I had to walk away from that studio. Navigating my way through the pandemic was super draining. It took me into a space where I wasn't physically, mentally, socially doing the things I needed to do to be the person that I wanted to be. And walking away from my studio was one of the hardest things I have ever done in my life. And honestly, I probably should have left long before I did. But I also come to find in the journey, walking away from the studio, I was definitely went into a bout of depression. It was kind of like, okay, well, I hit this mecca of owning my studio and now I don't anymore. So who am I? If I'm not the studio owner and then became the studio owner who was busting her ass to keep her space open, right, during this pandemic, during this unprecedented time that nobody knew what to do with, who am I now? Am I just a yoga teacher? Am I going to be like just a mom again, even though it's the most important job ever? But it felt like a kick to the gut. Like I had hit this space that I worked so hard for, and now I've fallen down here. And so I sat with that for a solid year and really was in my feels and having a really rough time kind of getting going again. And we moved to upstate South Carolina from North Carolina. And I connected with Megan, who owns Anderson Yoga Center, before we even moved here, and said, hey, I own this studio, but I'm getting ready to walk away from it. Would you let me come teach at your studio? And she, being the wonderful human being she is, took me in with open arms. And little did I know that one step of me almost having to swallow my pride and be like, okay, well, I'm just going to go back to teaching yoga. I'm going to teach yoga. I'm going to enjoy teaching for a while. And that's just what I need to do right now. And it led me into this incredible path of Megan coming to me one day and saying, hey, I have this idea. Do you want to host a retreat in Costa Rica? Like, hell yeah. Who doesn't want to do that? Of course I do. Absolutely 100%. So we started that journey, and now, I mean, it has really grown and expanded, and I'm doing something that I didn't even know I wanted to do. And I'm on a path that I didn't even know was available to me. And we've started and created this whole incredible business where we are literally traveling the world 3-4 times a year, taking groups of people on these just really magical adventures. And I look back now at my time and my hurt and my work and all of those things that went into what felt like a failure, and realized it's exactly where I needed to be and what I needed to do to get to where I am now, which is where I'm supposed to be, right? I was trying to kind of force this thing that I thought I was supposed to be doing because that's success. That's what success looks like. Owning this business, making it work, making it run, and me not being able to see it through the long haul felt like a failure, where in retrospect, it was just a part of my journey. It wasn't a failure at all. It was lessons learned. You can't always be successful 100% of the time. And the failures are what kind of gets you to your next space. And I can definitely say that where I am now, having this business with Megan, getting back to just my love and joy of teaching yoga and what that means to me has really been significant. And then starting, my website journey with Jen Fortin Yoga, I can truly say that I'm the happiest that I've been in a really long time. And it forced me to restructure my quality of life. Am I physically doing what I need to do every day for energetic purposes, to feel good, to get done what I need to get done? Am I mentally in check? Am I socially doing the things that I need to do? And that was lost for a little while. So it's definitely been a wild ride. It's been a roller coaster, but I would do it all over again because I had to learn the lessons then that I have going forward now.
Mm-hmm.
No?
Yeah. It's amazing the journey that you've taken and the ups and downs. I think a lot of folks can resonate and relate to that of, hey, nothing is a linear path, even as much as we'd love for it to be, whether it's a personal fitness journey, whether it's a personal career journey, whatever that might be. And being able to be okay and, accept that things are unfolding the way they are. And what am I going to do about that? And it's hard and it's messy. And sometimes it can feel like there's no light at the end of the tunnel, but you've developed some of those skill sets. And I'm imagining that some of the skill sets you've learned from practicing yoga, being a teacher, helped come in very, very heavily, especially in those really, really tough times. Is that accurate?
Oh yeah, that's absolutely accurate. I had to sit with my shit.
Mm.
I had to sit with my shit. I had to sit down and I allowed myself to feel sorry for myself for a while,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Throw myself a pity party. Like I threw myself a pity party for a little bit. And then I had to sit with myself and say, okay, this didn't work out, but it doesn't mean your life is over. It doesn't mean that nothing good is ever going to happen to you again. It doesn't mean that you're a failure at life. It means that this one thing wasn't meant for you, right? It wasn't meant for you. So what did you learn? How can you put into practice what you learned? And where are you going to go now? Because giving up isn't an option,
Mm-hmm.
right? So giving up on life is not an option. So sit with your shit, feel the feels, get it all out. Now stand up and start to roll with it. Go with the flow. And that's hard for me. It's hard for type A's because we want to control it all. We want everything to fit in nice, pretty little boxes. Mm-hmm. And yoga has definitely taught me that life isn't that way. You can't control it all. There are some things that are just completely out of your control. And you have to learn to sit with it, sit with the discomfort, sit with things not working out sometimes, and then remember who you are. Remember who you are, stand up, and start to roll. Start to see where these paths are going to take you. Because I'm just a huge believer that everything that happens is meant to be. It just is. Everything that happens is meant to be. And what can we learn from it? How can you put those lessons into practice? And just sometimes, like, pardon my language, but you just have to remember who the fuck you are, right? And you've got to stand up, put one foot in front of the other, even if it's heavy, even if it's painful, even if it's hard, and you just have to keep walking the path. Just have to keep walking the path. You have to put those practices into daily habits. You have to start with your checklist. And that's exactly what I did. Like, okay, I've sunk real low here. How am I going to get back to the person that I know I am, the person that I want to be? And you start with those daily habits, those daily rituals, getting yourself back to physically feeling better, mentally feeling better, socially interacting and feeling better. And then you start to find that life really starts to turn and take you exactly where you were supposed to be in the first place.
The roadmap that you just laid out for everybody, especially when things get really tough, if you strip everything away, like, who are you at your core and who's the type of person you want to be, and take away the job titles, take away the career, take away all these other things. And it's just like, hey, who am I and who do I want to be? And if I'm not living in alignment with that, that's where things seem to get out of whack. And it's like, okay, I know I want to be the type of person who shows up with energy and is encouraging and loving or whatever it is. And I'm not doing that right now. So what's going on? Well, something with what's going on in your daily life, those practices or whatever, is not in alignment with the way you see yourself. So giving yourself some time, giving yourself some silence to sit with it, be with it, and then figure out the way forward. It's really the path out of it. And sometimes you can get there alone, and sometimes you need help and you need someone else to help guide and influence you along the way. And either way, that roadmap of, hey, who am I? Let's get some clarity there. Let's get back to baseline of what are the practices that allow me to be the type of person I want to be, and then figure out what's the path forward so that I can take care of myself, my family, etc. Like, that's such a powerful tool and concept and roadmap to have for folks, especially when things are tough, because life is messy and it never seems to want to go the way we'd like it to.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Life is messy. And like you said, there's no linear path. There's no straightforward path to anything, really,
Mm-hmm.
right? It curves and it winds and it flip-flops all over the place and unexpected things happen. And it is really finding those daily, I call them rituals or daily
Mm-hmm.
routines that keep you in alignment with who you are, what makes you feel good. And once you have that as a constant in your life, everything else is a little more clear, right? You think more clearly, you see more clearly. It doesn't feel so jumbled up here, right? The head
Mm-hmm.
starts to kind of even itself out a little bit, and things really do start to naturally flow once you have yourself kind of put together. So yeah, I'm a huge believer in daily routines.
Mm-hmm.
For
Yeah.
sure.
And I could tell, and I know from knowing you for some time now that you're a very thoughtful person, and even the way you laid out your idea of quality of life, like these three boxes I'm trying to check off, the way I go about, the businesses I run, go about living my life. I'm curious if there are certain like principles that sort of guide or influence your decisions, beyond maybe those three check boxes, or if you've thought of it in that context of, hey, when I think about how I make sense of the world or make decisions or try and move forward, what are the principles or those guiding tenets that sort of define or help you see the world the way you'd like to? Is there anything that comes to mind for you for that?
Yeah, I think one of them is definitely, as I feel like I'm a yes person. So if there's an opportunity, I'm going to take it. But I've also had to learn along the years that yes person is quick to burn out. So sitting with the things that I know will serve me and get me to where I want to be tomorrow, and the things that are just draining my energy. Right. So learning what to take on and what to set aside, what is meant for me or makes sense in my journey right now, and what doesn't. Right. So learning to separate that. And that's been a challenge for me because I do have a tendency to want to take on and do everything. So it's been a work in progress. I've really had to, and my husband, Matt, actually is the one who a few years ago was like, Jen, tell them you will think about it and get back to them. Like, give yourself a minute. You can't say yes to everything. Like,
Mm-hmm.
tell
Mm-hmm.
them you will think about it. And that really was the start of me going, okay, I'm allowed to give myself space and to sit with it. And if this opportunity isn't in alignment with the path I'm on right now, I'm allowed to say, no, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, but this just isn't going to work out for me right now. And then taking on the things that do make sense to my path and my journey. So healthy boundaries is definitely something I try and live
Mm-hmm.
by.
Mm-hmm.
And those are boundaries for myself to protect my energy and to protect, the journey that I'm on. And then I think at the end of the day, really just compassion and understanding. Compassion, understanding, and that starts with me, right? Giving myself compassion for not being perfect, because I'm not. Nobody is. I'm going to mess up. I'm going to trip. I'm going to fall. And giving myself grace for that and saying, like, it's okay. What'd you learn? Get up, dust yourself off. Where are we going now? Right. And then also offering that compassion to others. And maybe even being the voice that says, it's okay. You tripped. You
Mm-hmm.
fell. Dust yourself off. Where are we going now? So yeah, as I kind of navigate my way through just life and businesses, compassion's huge and boundaries are huge. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a hard thing to learn, something you have to put into practice and you have to work on. And, it's not easy to set boundaries all the time, but it's necessary. It's necessary for your mental health. It's necessary for the direction that you see your life going in. And I think it's important to also model those behaviors for what we're asking our clients to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're asking all of these things of our clients to set boundaries, right? Even physically, if you're lifting too heavy and it hurts, should you be doing it? No, that's a boundary, right? Set that boundary. Find the space that works for you. find the weight that works for you, that feels good to your body, that's going to allow you to grow and build strength as opposed to weigh you down and hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And those same principles go into the mental, and those same principles go into the social. So I think my biggest kind of healthy practice for myself in life, in business, is boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can really get a sense of over the years how you've come to have clarity, and that clarity has led to developing these principles around boundaries for self and others, and compassion for self and others, because those are the things that have allowed you to continue on the path and figure out and navigate when things get messy and when things are fun, and all of the good and bad experiences along the way help because there's clarity, because there's some principles, and then you've got your daily rituals which allow you to be the type of person that you want to be, which makes a lot of sense why I think we vibe and enjoy each other's conversations and have a great perspective, when it comes to how we think about lifestyle and helping other people and what that looks like along the way. And so I'd love for you to highlight and help people understand. So if they want to connect with you or stay up to date, I know I can speak from personal experience of in-person instructor-led yoga classes, which I have thoroughly enjoyed, but also being part of the retreat that went down to Costa Rica, which was really 7 days of immersing yourself with as many yoga practices as you'd like, meditation practices, and then just get to enjoy incredible landscapes and incredible scenery in a beautiful location. You have a lot more of those coming up in a variety of locations all around the world. So for folks who are interested to connect with you, maybe jump on a retreat to go to some different places, how can people connect or figure out ways they can do that?
Yeah, so you could always visit my website, jenfortinyoga.com. There it has all the things I'm doing. So all of the courses and online content and all of the retreats. And I think we have 9 or 10 at the moment, booked out until 2025. So you can definitely find all of those goodies at jenfortinyoga.com. You can find me on Instagram. I'm not the best on social media, so you'll see me sporadically posting here and there. But that's Jen Fortin Yoga and Fitness on Instagram. And if you go to my website, you can easily connect with me through email. And I'm really good and diligent about responding and answering questions and all of that good stuff. And yeah, I think that's probably the most solid way to get a hold of me.
Yeah. And for those of you who need playlists that are acoustic versions of great pop songs for yoga, that's another reason I've always enjoyed Jen's classes. I thought her playlists were phenomenal. I know you've got those stored on Spotify if people ever need something for a nice and chill hour-long session.
Yep, all my stuff is public. So Spotify, it's Jen Fortin 1. And I have hundreds of playlists through the years. So you're welcome to go through and grab whatever you'd like. But yeah, music speaks to my soul. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah. Well, Jen, thanks so much for taking some time to connect. It's always great to catch up and hear how things are going in your neck of the woods. And I look forward to the next time we get together in person. And thanks again for taking some time to chat with me today.
Thank you, my friend. I admire you so much. You're one of my favorite people. And any way I ever get to connect with you is truly, truly an honor. So thank you.